Forbidden Lands is an original fantasy tabletop RPG by Free League. The lead designer was Thomas Harenstam and main illustrator Nils Gulliksen. Other contributors include Christian Graneth, Nils Carlin, Costa Kostelis, and Eric Granstrom. The core rule set comes in 2 books, a 265-page Game Master's Guide and a 209-page Player's Handbook. The theme is old school fantasy, which makes this Free League's answer to the old school Renaissance or OSR movement that has been underway for several years now. After a read-through of these 2 core books, I can safely say that this team has continued to live up to its reputation as a maker of high-quality RPGs. The artwork by Nils Gulliksen is evocative of early ink artwork by David Sutherland, D.A. Trampier, and the like, and the backstory is very dark and intriguing. Due to the density and breadth of each of these 2 books, I've decided to create a separate video for each one. This video deals with the Game Master's Guide, a book which delves into the history of the world, its pantheon of gods, and its races, whereas the Player's Handbook covers the Forbidden Lands game mechanics, including character classes, combat, magic, skills, and talents. Click on the link below to watch my review of the Forbidden Lands Player's Handbook. Right out of the gate, the authors want you to know that they have created a harsh world. They lay out 7 principles for the Game Master to follow, the most notable of which are that the realm is dangerous, its denizens are dangerous, and both GM and players should get used to player deaths. This is in line with the very earliest iterations of D&D, which were unapologetic and brutal on player characters. One of the most striking segments of the Forbidden Lands GM book is the detailed history section. Here is told a sprawling tale of humankind coming to a new land, where they encounter an elven and dwarven people living in harmony with their nature gods. The humans are sent south and separated from the others, but over time they factionalize and spread back north, at times warring with and at times allying with the dwarves and elves, interbreeding to create new species or kin. Eventually, the desperation of one human faction becomes so strong to dominate that a terrible sorcerer named Zygofer rises to power as a commander and later regional warlord. He opens a gateway in order to bring forth demons and secure victory in the endless wars. Eventually the gate is sealed, but not before Zygofer interbreeds demons with all manner of person and fauna. This perverse practice causes the lands to change as the saturation of demon variants become a part of the continental landscape. Eventually, facing his own mortality, Zygofer melds with his sorceress daughter and a giant spider demon, forming a new entity called Zyterra, a truly perverse and horrible demigod that may or may not still be around by the time your players begin their quest in the Forbidden Lands. There are a ton of historical details that I can't cover here, a massive saga between different religions, and a carnivorous blood mist that denies travel to everyone on the continent for 300 years. Your player's adventure ostensibly begins after this blood mist has lifted, a time when dormant battlefields and dungeons and abandoned strongholds that have been left untouched for centuries are suddenly open to the public and ripe for exploration. The pantheon of gods are unique, but can be confusing since different factions sometimes call the same gods by different names. Worm, Raven, the married gods Rust and Heem, Huge, Clay, Whale, Flow, the Nightwalker, and Horn. Each of these gods are real in the Forbidden Lands, and they take a variety of different forms. Players can discover legendary items which call forth the power and the rage of these gods, but it is advised to the GM to hand these items out sparingly. The selection of races in Forbidden Lands will look awfully familiar to anyone who has ever played any standard fantasy setting, but what's interesting here is the origin of many races. Humans, for the most part, are humans, coming in several varieties split mostly by region and religion, but elves, for example, are all born of a ruby shard. They literally grow around this sliver of rock, and the stone itself contains their soul. Their bodies can regrow into a new elf, or even into things like Ents, or even installed into the walls of a church to forever observe people and the passage of time. But if the shard is crushed or destroyed, that is true death for an elf. Elves who have mated with humans create the Elven Spring and the Frailers, half-elves, the both of which have their own culture and appearance. Dwarves have been charged by their creator named Huge with building the world so large that it reaches the sun. And it is not clear if the god is serious or if the dwarves are all out of their minds. Nevertheless, they are subdivided into clans, which each have their own flavor and hard-headed beliefs about things. Dwarves who have mated with humans create ogres, and these are ogres in the otherwise very traditional sense. Orcs come from the god Clay, and were bred for war, which is reminiscent of the Tolkien origin. Their clans each describe a subculture unique to orcs, making them as interesting as any of the other races in the book. Some anthropomorphized races have been thrown in for good measure. The Wolfkin, the lizard-like Saurian, and a strange little race called Whiners, which are like twisted, primitive little gnomes who bear magical flesh that can multiply gold and other valuables through a painful and inhumane process. They are widely and savagely hunted for their flesh by all the other races in the land. By far the strangest departure of race origins in the book are those of halflings and goblins. When either halflings or goblins give birth, the mothers from both races give birth to both halfling and goblin equally. The babies are then separated by race and go on living their own segregated civilizations per normal. This is extraordinarily strange and really the sort of thing that makes Forbidden Lands special. The Bestiary in the book contains 25 classic monsters. Unlike the race origins, there is minimal bizarre originality here, but rather a very disciplined approach to making each of the creatures playable adversaries at the table. Every creature has a D6 table of attacks, with every attack titled with an exclamation mark, something I really appreciated. So with the D6 table, you can pick and choose your attack on the monster's turn or roll for one randomly. The demon gets some extra love in the book, mostly because the entire backstory of the setting is based on a demon infestation in the recent past. You get several pages of tables to put together what is statistically millions of possible combinations for your demon. The artifacts section in the book covers 18 objects or relics in very great detail, with an illustration for each object, as well as a history blurb that binds to the historical section of the setting. Each of these objects contains extremely potent effects for players, some with serious drawbacks. In order to fully utilize the worth of the artifacts in this book, you really need to buy into the setting's history. However, they can still be used just as objects with powerful effects. One way to get everyone invested in these items is to print out the description of any given artifact from the Legends section of this book. These are a great way to let your players hold a piece of the setting in their hands and feel like an adventurer. By getting a first-hand account of the details of a quest item, they are given the chance to immerse themselves in the setting. A lot of these handouts are wordy though, so you might want to distribute to players well before a game session starts. Since this RPG is designed around a beautifully detailed hex map, which players are expected to explore, there is a D66 table with 43 possible encounter types based on the terrain of the hex that your players are in. This encounter section starts about halfway into the book, and virtually the rest of the book is filled with this sort of thing. Usable encounters, adventure hooks, and tables to generate any kind of village, dungeon, or castle for players to stumble upon. There is also a thorough NPC generator, as well as a decent treasure generator. And at the end of the book, there are 3 fully fleshed out adventures, each with a numbered map and corresponding details. Each of these 3 adventures contains their own set of unique NPCs and additional setting history and details, and each takes place in one of the 3 main location paradigms of the game: village, castle, and dungeon. These canned adventures are meaty and well suited for the GM who wants to fully buy into the world of Forbidden Lands. Anyways, there you have it, the Forbidden Lands Game Master's Guide, a fresh look at an old classic. Like virtually all OSR products these days, a lot of the bits that didn't work in the old school books have been left out, while interesting and playable innovations have been seamlessly weaved in. Like I mentioned, the Game Master's Guide is one of a set of 2 books, the other being the Player's Handbook. I've linked my review of the Player's Handbook below, which really goes on to explain the real charm and appeal of this game, its mechanics, and how the hex crawl works. I've put links below if you want to buy any of these books in their ultra deluxe boxed faux leather form or in PDF at the Free League website. Thank you so much for watching. This is Dave, signing off. See ya.